Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Now, India's voice to the world. I'm Nipakshi Khurana, coming up in the next hour. US President Donald Trump discussing options including military action to take control of Greenland. Denmark warns the move will destroy NATO alliance. France considers deploying soldiers to help maintain peace in Ukraine. Germany opens to ceasefire monitoring role from neighboring territory. Syria and Israel revive security talks mediated by US in Paris, agree to set up US-supervised communication cell for military de-escalation. Cold snap grips Europe, creating travel chaos. Hundreds of flights cancelled, 6 people dead in weather-related accidents. Winter hazards expected to continue till weekend. And in sports, two-time Olympic medalist PV Sindhu returns to competitive action for the first time since last September at the Malaysia Open. On to the details now. The White House said on Tuesday that President Donald Trump is discussing options for acquiring Greenland, including potential use of the U.S. military. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt said that acquiring Greenland is a national security priority of the United States to deter adversaries like Russia and China. Well, Washington's stark warning came despite Greenland and Denmark both calling for a speedy meeting with the United States to clear up misunderstandings. Earlier, Greenland and Denmark said they had asked to meet U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio quickly to discuss the issue. Denmark and Greenland have echoed the warning, cautioning that any U.S. move against a NATO member would fundamentally undermine the alliance. Trump's remarks and threats over Greenland have also triggered sharp reactions across Europe, deepening tensions within NATO just days after the Venezuela operation. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer publicly rejected Trump's suggestion of taking over Greenland, stressing that the island's future lies solely with Greenland and Denmark, both close NATO allies. And for more on this, we have Akshay Dongre joining us. Well, Akshay, what would it mean for U.S. credibility in NATO if military pressure were even implicitly directed at a fellow member?
Well, already the kind of threats that Donald Trump is giving to Greenland and the kind of wishes that he has expressed, be it Canada, be it Greenland. And it's quite offensive in nature, because if you go out and ask somebody that you just want to buy their house, you just want to buy their family, it's quite an offensive tone that has been used by the United States president. It has already undermined the credibility of the U.S. as far as its NATO membership is concerned. We saw that Donald Trump has always been anti-NATO. He initially, when he came for his first term, he spoke about about the alliance and how fractured it is, how other countries are not paying their share of 2% on defense spending and other expenses. But now, the situation has quite deteriorated from where it started earlier, from, the defense spending to now undermining each other as far as NATO's own role is concerned. In Ukraine war as well, Donald Trump has been quite harsh on NATO. He has taken many a times quite strict stand on Ukraine as well. That was quite opposite from the Joe Biden administration. So as of now, what we are seeing is already credibility going down, but it is going to go down significantly if any kind of even implicit action is sought by the US, and it is going to be illegal. It is going to be challenged, of course, on international courts. It is going to see a massive pushback from the US, from the European allies, especially given the fact that they are already trying to counter Russia's sort of invasion of Ukrainian land, and now their own ally is going to play by the same rule book. So it is going to be difficult for Europe if what Donald Trump is saying about Greenland is in fact what he intends to do.
All right, so NATO's credibility, of course, undermined. But how are Trump's remarks affecting NATO unity in Europe? And could they make allies rethink their reliance on the United States amid concerns about Russia and China, of course?
Well, obviously, the people of Denmark, the people of Greenland, the people who are the countries that are in alliance with these two countries are obviously, rethinking the kind of alliance that is there, where one of the country that is in fact the biggest military power is uh, looking at one of their own allies and trying to seize their territory, or rather buy off their territory, even when they have expressed no desire to sell their land to any other third party. Yes, obviously the credibility of US has also significantly been dented, but not to an extent where it can become a sort of a problem, because the European countries, the NATO members, already have a big tension going on towards their east, as Russia mounts pressure on Ukraine. They need US on their side, so that is why what we are seeing is what we are seeing, that European countries are being too soft on the US as far as these claims are concerned. Otherwise, this kind of claim would have seen a serious pushback had a sort of a major threat from the east, from Russia, not been there.
All right. Thank you so much, Akshay, for all that. And moving on, in the aftermath of the toppling of Nicolas Maduro, who was captured from his country, Venezuela, by US forces over the weekend, Caracas and Washington have reached a deal to export up to $2 billion worth of Venezuelan crude to the United States. Now, the agreement is a strong sign that the Venezuelan government is responding to Trump's demand that they open up to US oil companies or risk more military intervention. Now, US President Donald Trump said that Venezuela is turning over 30 million to 50 million barrels of oil to the United States. On Truth Social platform, Trump posted that, and I quote, "The oil will be sold at its market price and that money will be controlled by me as President of the United States of America to ensure it is used to benefit the people of Venezuela and the United States," unquote. And amid the reports of Venezuelan and US officials discussing exporting Venezuelan crude to refineries in the United States, oil CEOs are expected to visit the White House as early as Thursday to discuss investments in Venezuela. Well, Venezuela has millions of barrels of oil loaded on tankers and in storage tanks that it has been unable to ship due to a blockade on exports imposed by US President Donald Trump since mid-December. Now, the blockade was part of rising US pressure on the government of the then Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro that culminated in US forces capturing him at the weekend. A deal to sell the stuck crude to refineries in the United States would redirect them from China, which has been Venezuela's top buyer in the last decade, and especially since the United States imposed sanctions on companies involved in oil trade with Venezuela in 2020. While Venezuelan citizens crossed into Colombia on Monday expressing mixed emotions about recent political developments in Venezuela. The Colombian government announced that it would deploy 30,000 soldiers along the border with Venezuela to guarantee security. Venezuela's interim president, Delcy Rodriguez, announced the activation of an agro-food, industrial and communal high command to protect the nation's productive apparatus after the U.S. attack and capture of Nicolas Maduro. Rodriguez emphasized Venezuela's active resistance and spiritual growth in facing external threats and aggression. She urged Venezuelans to work towards fulfilling their duty to the nation through national unity across all productive sectors.
Venezuelans, let's keep working so that at the end of 2026 we can say that we have fulfilled our duty as a country in national unity. that we Venezuelans have fulfilled our duty in all the productive sectors.
Paz, que busca su propio camino.
Well, also Venezuela's acting president, Delcy Rodriguez, declared 7 days of mourning for members of the military killed in the U.S. raid over the weekend to capture leader Nicolas Maduro. Cuba's government said on Sunday that 32 of its military and police officers working in Venezuela were also killed and declared 2 days of mourning. Also, Chilean President-elect Jose Antonio Cast is visiting Lima on Wednesday. Peru's President Jose and Cast would be discussing a possible humanitarian corridor to facilitate the return of Venezuelan migrants to their country. Both the leaders support the U.S. action in Venezuela and viewing migration as a major problem, generating insecurity in their nations. Also, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke to the foreign ministers of the group of 7 countries about the importance of freeing Venezuelan political prisoners and putting in place the conditions for democracy and planning for elections. Canada's Foreign Minister Anita Anand said they agreed as a group to continue the dialogue about the importance of international law in other global conflicts. And still to come, DD India Newshour. Israeli Foreign Minister visits Somaliland days after Israel recognizes its independence. Trial of former South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol over martial law attempt set to conclude this week.
स्वागत आहे टू मॅग्नेटिक महाराष्ट्र.
This week on Defense Dynamics, India is reshaping its military structure with Bhaira formations. What are ramjet-powered artillery shells? And how India's rocket punch gets an emergency boost with Suryastra. As Europe and Israel turn to India for industrial depth, my take explains the why. Watch Defense Dynamics this Wednesday at 8 p.m. IST only on DD India.
Welcome to Lakshadweep, the land of 100,000 islands, the aquatic wonderland of India, an archipelago of spectacular marine gems, colorful coral and crystal clear lagoons, a kaleidoscope of turquoise blue. Each island of Lakshadweep draws in explorers with its unique beauty. Witness idyllic sunsets and pristine beaches of Kavarati. the majestic lighthouse and colorful boat races at Minicoy. Experience water sports in the shallow lagoons of Kadmat. Unwind in the serene setting of Bangaram. Lakshadweep offers a precious heritage of ecology and culture, with rhythmic beats of folk dances echoing through these islands, delighting visitors in traditional folk dances and local artworks with abundant marine life and mineral resources. The islands are advancing towards
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Nepakshi Khurana, and moving on. France and Britain have signed a declaration of intent on the future deployment of multinational forces in Ukraine if a peace deal is made with Russia. Now, the pledge came at a summit in Paris of the coalition of the willing of mainly European nations to firm up guarantees to reassure Kyiv. Heads of state and top officials took place in Tuesday's talks in Paris. Unlike previous coalition meetings, the summit was also attended by U.S. envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, President Donald Trump's son-in-law, as well as America's top general in Europe, Alexis Grinkovich. Allies also largely agreed to robust security guarantees for Ukraine and proposed that the U.S. would take the lead in monitoring a truce. But the key issue of territory is still being discussed. After talks with Ukraine's allies, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said that peace in Ukraine was closer than ever, though the hardest yards still lay ahead.
It's important that we're starting the year like this. European and American allies, side by side with President Zelensky, standing for peace. And we are closer to that goal than ever. But of course, the hardest yards are still ahead.
Well, French President Emmanuel Macron later said that the signing of security guarantees, including the deployment of a multinational military force, would dissuade further aggressions on Ukraine.
This meeting today has had significant progress, which is reflected by the Paris Declaration for robust security guarantees for a solid and lasting peace. This declaration of the coalition of the willing recognizes for the first time an operational convergence among 35 countries that comprise the coalition of the willing, Ukraine, and the United States of America to build robust security guarantees.
Well, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, after the meeting, said Kyiv's allies had determined how a European deterrence force would operate in Ukraine following a ceasefire, as well as which countries would participate.
The details have been worked out in the system of other documents. It has been determined which countries are ready to take the lead in the elements guaranteeing security on the ground, in the sky, at sea, in restoration. It has been determined which forces are needed. It has been determined how the forces will be managed, at what levels the command there will be.
Well, protests continue to grip Iran, with tensions escalating on the streets and pressure mounting on the country's leadership. As clashes intensify and the economic fallout deepens, the unrest is entering a critical phase with no clear path to calm in sight.
The unrest in Iran shows no sign of abating as protests entered its 10th day on Tuesday, tightening the pressure on the country's clerical leadership. Fresh clashes erupted in the heart of Tehran, where security forces fired tear gas in the historic Tehran Bazaar to disperse demonstrators chanting slogans against the ruling establishment. As anger simmers on the streets, the government has announced a relief measure introducing a monthly stipend roughly $7 issued as non-cashable electronics credit to be spent at select grocery store over the next 4 months.
Individuals can receive an amount equivalent to 1 million tomans, approximately 7 USD, per person per month, which is credited to their accounts for 4 months of Day, Bahman, Esfand, and Farvardin. This is credit. It is only intended for the purchase of a series of goods and is in line with reducing the economic pressure on the people.
But the move has failed to calm the public sentiments. As many residents said, assistance falls short of addressing deepening economic pain and rising prices.
This plan doesn't really ease any pain, especially with these price hikes. But still, for those who are truly eligible and genuinely in need of even that 1 million, around $7, it does at least cover a small part of their needs. It does help after all. From my perspective as a citizen, though, it doesn't help much.
On the ground, the toll continues to mount. At least 25 people have been killed, with more than 1,000 protesters detained since the protests began. With mounting casualties, economic strain, and defiance in the streets, Iran's leadership now faces a growing challenge, one that is testing its authority day after day. Amish Mahajan's report for DT India.
Well, Israel and Syria agreed on Tuesday to set up a communication mechanism in US-mediated talks to coordinate on security, intelligence, and commercial issues in Paris. Now, a joint statement issued by the U.S. State Department after the talks said that Syria and Israel were committed to achieving lasting security and stability arrangements for both the countries. Both sides have decided to establish a joint fusion mechanism, a dedicated communication cell to facilitate immediate and ongoing coordination on the intelligence sharing, military de-escalation, diplomatic engagement, and commercial opportunities under the supervision of the United States. The mechanism will serve as a platform to address any disputes promptly and work to prevent misunderstandings. The statement did not say Israel would refrain from further strikes or restore an agreement that was previously in place as well. An Hamas ultra-Orthodox Jewish rally turned deadly in Jerusalem when a teenage boy was crushed and killed after a man driving a bus hit the crowd. People were protesting against a law to conscript ultra-Orthodox Jews into the Israeli armed forces under a ruling established at the time of Israel's creation in 1948. Men who devote themselves full-time to studying Jewish texts are given a de facto pass from mandatory military service. The ultra-Orthodox make up 14% of Israel's Jewish population. In November, a new draft law was put forward in the Parliament's Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee after a previous conscription bill, which was voted down in July. An Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar visited Somaliland 10 days after Israel formally recognized the self-declared republic as an independent and sovereign state. Israel is the only country that has formally recognized Somaliland. Somalia has described Israel's decision on recognition as an unlawful step and said Saar's visit was a serious violation of its sovereignty. In a statement on X, Saar said that he had held talks on the full range of relations with Somaliland's President Abdirahman Mohamed Abdullahi in the capital Hargeisa. And Abdullahi had accepted an invitation from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to make an official visit to Israel. Somaliland, once a British protectorate, has long sought formal recognition as an independent state, although it has signed bilateral agreements with various governments on investments and security coordination. Somaliland lies in northwestern Somalia, shares land borders with Ethiopia and Djibouti, and sits across the Gulf of Aden from Yemen. And South Korea's former president Yoon Suk-yeol's trial on charges of leading an insurrection through his short-lived imposition of martial law is set to conclude this week. Now, the Seoul Central District Court is scheduled to hold 4 hearings this week. While 2 hearings were already held on Monday and Tuesday, 3rd hearing is scheduled for Wednesday. The final hearing in the insurrection trial of Yoon, former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun, former National Police Agency Chief Cho Ji-ho, and 5 others' case will be held on Friday. Kim, Cho, and the 5 others accused of playing a key role in an insurrection in connection with the December 2024 martial law attempt, and their 2 trials were merged with Yoon's last week. Yoon is charged with conspiring with the former defense minister and others to stage a riot with the aim of subverting the constitution by illegally declaring martial law in the absence of war or an equivalent national emergency. And at least 22 Ethiopian migrants were killed and more than 60 injured after a lorry they were traveling in overturned in the country's northern Afar region. The accident occurred early on Tuesday in Samara in the Afar region. Ethiopia is one of the main departure points for the eastern route by which people migrating leave the Horn of Africa in search of work in wealthy Gulf countries. Now, thousands of African migrants take the route across the Red Sea, mostly from Djibouti to Yemen, in search of work as laborers or domestic workers. Ethiopia is Africa's second most populous country with some 130 million inhabitants, and more than 40% live below the poverty line, according to the World Bank. And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world today. Orthodox Christians in Serbia and Montenegro gathered on Tuesday to celebrate Christmas Eve with the burning of oak branches known as Banjaks, the arrival of Christmas on January 7th, which begins with a midnight liturgy, ends 4 weeks of fasting with no meat or dairy products are supposed to be consumed. Serbia and Montenegro still use the Julian calendar to mark Christmas in January rather than December. In Moscow, Russian Orthodox Patriarch Kirill led a Christmas Orthodox Divine Liturgy on Wednesday night in Christ the Savior Cathedral. The ceremony was broadcast on Russian state TV broadcaster. Orthodox Christians celebrate the holiday on the night of January 7th, while other denominations celebrate on December 23rd or 25th. In Bethlehem, the Greek Orthodox Patriarch of Jerusalem, Theophilos III, arrived at the West Bank city to celebrate Orthodox Christmas on Tuesday. Worshippers and pilgrims gathered outside the Church of the Nativity and enjoyed festive atmosphere. And still to come on DD India Newshour. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar calls on Luxembourg's Prime Minister Luc Frieden. We'll get you weather updates from around the country as cold wave grips North India. And Air India Express launches weekly Varanasi-Bangkok flights from February 1st.
Can the US launch a bombing campaign against Iran? The Philippines vessel suffered structural damage. The saga of child sexual abuse is the United States China's debt trap strategy. Truth is stranger than fiction. But sometimes hard to uncover. Trust us to tell the truth, unadulterated and pure, of every story that matters to you. You read between the lines, cut the clutter, and connect the dots to get you the full picture. Watch Connecting the Dots at these times with me, only on DD India.
Welcome to DD India, where a billion voices unite, connecting viewers to the stories that matter. India is not just another news channel, it's the internet.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Time now for a quick recap of the headlines. US President Donald Trump discussing options including military action to take control of Greenland. Denmark warns the move will destroy NATO alliance. France considers deploying soldiers to help maintain peace in Ukraine. Germany opens to ceasefire monitoring role from neighboring territory. Syria and Israel revive security talks mediated by US in Paris, agree to set up US-supervised communication cell for military de-escalation. Cold snap grips Europe, creating travel chaos. Hundreds of flights cancelled, 6 people dead in weather-related accidents. Winter hazards expected to continue till weekend. And in sports, two-time Olympic medalist PV Sindhu returns to competitive action for the first time since last September at the Malaysia Open. Well, moving on, Bangladesh is witnessing a disturbing surge in violent attacks against members of the Hindu community, with multiple incidents reported across the country in recent days. From sexual violence to targeted killings, these cases are raising concerns, serious questions about minority safety and law and order.
A 40-year-old Hindu man, owner of a grocery shop, has been murdered after unidentified attackers struck him with a sharp weapon in Narsingdi city of Bangladesh. The murder of grocery trader Moni Chakraborty has increased fear and anger in the minority communities across the country. Moni Chakraborty was attacked with a sharp weapon while returning home after closing his shop at Char Sindoor Bazaar on Monday. He later succumbed to his injuries. Local business owners formed a human chain demanding justice.
প্রতিবেশী সে এলাকায় সবার কাছে সুপরিচিত, ছোট বড় সবার কাছে সুপরিচিত, এবং এলাকায় সে তার কোনো দুর্নাম নেই, কিন্তু বাইরে কি করে না করে এটা আমাদের জানা নেই, এবং যে এলাকায় কি বাইরে কি কেউ ওটার সঙ্গে কোনো শত্রুতা আছে কিনা এটাও আমাদের জানার বাইরে। আগামীকালকে সন্ধ্যার সময় মাগরিব বাদ মাগরিবের একটু আঘাত হয়তো কে বা কারা তার আততায়ীদের গুলিতে সে নিহত হয়েছে।
Bangladesh continues to witness brutal attacks on the Hindu community in recent weeks. On Monday, a Hindu businessman and journalist Rana Pratap Bairagi was shot dead in public at Kopalia Bazaar in Jashore. Bairagi, who was also the acting editor of a local newspaper, was fatally shot in the head by unidentified assailants. Police have launched an investigation.
Well, unfortunately, the Bangladesh society appears to have been much more radicalized in recent past. In Bangladesh, this is not the first time that these things are happening. They may not be orchestrated by a particular group. It could be stray incidents, but there has been a history about it. Since the 80s, 90s, we have seen that there have been minorities have been targeted in many ways.
On Monday, incident of a brutal gang rape with a Hindu woman also came to light, which stunned the minority communities in Bangladesh. She was tied to a tree and severely tortured in Kaliganj, Upazila of Jinaida district. The incident exposes the grim reality faced by minorities amid the unchecked activities of extremist groups. Officials said the incident occurred on December 31, though the complaint was filed later as victim was undergoing medical treatment. She was rescued in critical condition and admitted to hospital. One accused has been arrested and the investigation is going on.
Not a single person has been caught. And actually, in between the deaths of these 5 people, 6 people that now counting today has happened, there was also news about a terrible rape. A widow who was raped, and then they tied her to a tree and cut off her hair. And, it is absolutely unbelievably cruel, inhuman stuff which is going on. And I think more and more, even the recent 6th death, that also they're saying is because of jizya, because they're demanding jizya, and when the person cannot pay, then they come and, and they're really trying to frighten everybody into leaving Bangladesh.
These incidents put a question mark over minority safety, law and order, and accountability of administration in Bangladesh. Families of victims, including Khokon Chandra Das, Bajendra Biswas, Amrit Mondal, and Deepu Chandra Das, continue to await justice as investigations remain slow and perpetrators often go unpunished. Ravinder Chauhan's report for DD India.
Well, also, the United Nations has confirmed that it will not send observers for Bangladesh's parliamentary election scheduled for 12th of February. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, spokesperson, said that the UN does not deploy election observers without a mandate from either the UN General Assembly or the Security Council. Meanwhile, Transparency International Bangladesh has criticized the Bangladesh Election Commission's decision to cover accommodation and meal expenses for foreign election observers. Transparency International Bangladesh's executive director called it imprudent, discriminatory and contradictory to the principles of impartial election observation. And for more on Bangladesh, we have Naval Singh Parmar joining us from Dhaka on the phone line. Well, Naval Singh, for minority families living in fear after these killings and assaults, what do these attacks say about everyday safety in Bangladesh? And why do victim families say justice feels so slow or out of reach right now?
Well, in recent past, the incidents of violence against the minority community has been increased tremendously. And almost every day there are some reports of either killing, looting, or harassment to women. So this kind of things now become very frequent in Bangladesh. And as the election is approaching, election-related violence also increased, and some of the political leaders even threatened people of minority community and others to vote in certain way. So this is the worrisome case in Bangladesh, and as the law and order situation here is very in poor state, as there is no control of administration on law and order situation, and the police is also not having a we can say responsibility, and they are not behaving or working with the responsibility. They don't have command at all. There is no preventive kind of policing where patrolling or gust or certain kind of things that prevents the such kind of incidents. And at the same time, impunity being observed by the various fundamentalists, and that is the main reason why these kind of incidents are increasing. In fact, in Yunus administration, there are it is supported by the fundamentalist groups in Bangladesh and fundamentalist political party in Bangladesh. So Yunus is dependent on them, and some of his advisor are also belongs to or having a link with the fundamentalist political party, and so they have deployed a police official according to their agenda to create a Sharia or a kind of Islamic fundamentalist ideology, promote Islamic fundamentalist ideology, and that is why the police become ineffective. And due to that, the perpetrator of the crime or those who are responsible, accused are freeing freely. So that is the main reason why Tohidi Janta, so-called the fundamentalists, they themselves called Tohidi Janta, who are responsible for this kind of attacks and violence against the minority and the liberal people in Bangladesh.
All right, so law and order situation, of course, is very bad. But with the United Nations now declining to send election observers, how might the ongoing violence against minorities affect the credibility of Bangladesh's elections and the government's claims of ensuring security and democratic norms?
Well, in Bangladesh, credible election is a issue since last many decades. So previous election were also many questions were raised against the free, fair election, inclusive election, and election-related violence. Voting was very low. In some of the constituency, total voting was around 10 to 15%. So that shows the credibility of election in Bangladesh, and in an atmosphere of this kind of intimidation to the voters and particularly the vulnerable section of the society, it is difficult to say it is an inclusive or free and fair election happened in Bangladesh. And as the the Election Commission in Bangladesh tried to welcome or try to encourage the international observer by providing them free lodging, boarding facilities and red carpet so that they can give report according to their requirement. But the Transparency International Bangladesh criticized the moves. Election Commission should be neutral and impartial. So the observers from the international community should be, if they are coming, you should not provide them a red carpet facility. Let them come and let them judge what happens on ground. Also, in that way, the TIB's stand is very clear. And at the same time, UN declined to send observer, as they mentioned that there is no direction from the United Nations General Assembly. If they provide them green signal, then only they will deploy the election observer in Bangladesh. So credibility issue will be there for there in previous 3-4 election.
All right. Thank you so much, Naval Singh, for all those details from Bangladesh. And moving on, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, who is on a 6-day visit to France and Luxembourg, interacted with members of Indian community in Luxembourg, where he underlined the significant deepening of partnership with Luxembourg across political, business and technology domains. He also appreciated the contributions of the diaspora in deepening ties between the two nations. External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar also held an interaction with Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs Xavier Bettel, covering the bilateral cooperation and global situation. Both the leaders specifically discussed finance, investments, digital, AI, space and talent mobility, as well as continued deepening of ties, deepening of India-EU ties. External Affairs Minister also appreciated his personal interest in explaining Luxembourg's heritage and tradition.
We have now 78 years going of our relationship, and we've come a long way. For us, we really see Luxembourg as a very important partner in itself, but also with the European Union. And at a very crucial time in the development of our own ties with the European Union. So the influence you have in shaping that larger relationship, the support that you extend, that is something which is of great value to us. And I thank you, because I know in many ways you've been very much an advocate of deepening ties between India and the European Union.
Well, the minister also met Grand Duke Guillaume of Luxembourg and conveyed the warm greetings of President Draupadi Murmu, appreciated his positive sentiments for India and for deepening bilateral partnership. And Union Minister of Commerce and Industry Piyush Goyal to visit Brussels for a significant 2-day official trip from 8th to 9th of January. The visit underscores the intensifying diplomatic and technical engagements between New Delhi and Brussels, signaling a decisive push towards concluding the India-EU Free Trade Agreement. The talks come at a historic juncture for India-EU economic relations. The negotiations were ambitiously relaunched in June 2022 after a hiatus of over 9 years, reflecting a renewed mutual commitment to deepen economic integration. Since the resumption, the two sides have held 14 rounds of intense negotiations and several high-level dialogues at ministerial level, with the latest interaction in December 2025. The European Union is currently India's largest trading partner with a key investor, with bilateral trade in goods significantly bolstered in the 2024-25 fiscal year. The agreement is envisioned not just as a trade deal, but as a comprehensive partnership that addresses modern economic realities. During the visit, Goel will hold high-level dialogues with the European Union's Commissioner for Trade and Economic Security, Mr. Maros Sefcovic. The primary objective of these interactions is to provide strategic guidance to the negotiating teams to resolve pending issues and expedite the conclusion of a balanced and ambitious agreement. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi hailed the commissioning of Indian Coast Guard ship ICGS Samudra Pratap. On X, he wrote, and I quote, "The commissioning of the Indian Coast Guard ship Samudra Pratap is noteworthy for numerous reasons, including the fact that it adds strength to our vision of self-reliance, boosts our security apparatus, and reflects a commitment to sustainability, among others," unquote. On Monday, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh commissioned Indian Coast Guard ship Samudra Pratap, the first of two indigenously designed pollution control vessels for the Indian Coast Guard at Goa. Samudra Pratap is India's first homegrown pollution control vessel and the largest ship in the Coast Guard's fleet so far. Its induction substantially enhances the ICG's capability in pollution response, firefighting, maritime safety, environmental protection, and attended surveillance across the country's vast maritime zones. And after completing his visit to the United Arab Emirates, India Army Chief General Upendra Dwivedi proceeded on an official visit to Sri Lanka on Tuesday. The Indian Army, in a social media post, said the Army Chief visit to Sri Lanka underscores the strong commitment of both nations to enhance mutual understanding, deepen cooperation in areas of shared interest, and further strengthen bilateral defense cooperation. The Army Chief will engage with senior military and civil leadership, including the commander of the Sri Lankan Army, the Deputy Minister of Defense, and the Defense Secretary. He'll hold detailed discussions on matters of mutual interest, including training cooperation, capacity building, and regional security. General Dwivedi will also pay homage at the IPKF War Memorial, honoring the supreme sacrifice of Indian soldiers. The visit takes place against the backdrop of Operation Sagar Bandhu, reflecting India's enduring brotherhood with our steadfast partner. And strengthening connectivity between Thailand and North Indian state of Uttar Pradesh, Air India Express, India's first international value carrier, has announced weekly flights between Varanasi and Bangkok starting the 1st of February. The new service will offer travelers from Varanasi convenient non-stop connectivity to one of Asia's most popular leisure destinations. Similarly, it will provide convenient options for tourists from Thailand to visit Varanasi, Sarnath, and other major attractions on the Buddhist circuit. This launch will further build on Air India Express presence in Thailand. The airline currently connects Bangkok and Bengaluru, Lucknow, Pune, and Surat, and operates direct flights between Hyderabad and Phuket. And now on to some weather updates from across the globe. Intense snowfall and icy weather conditions have caused widespread travel disruption across Europe, with 6 reported killed in weather-related incidents on the continent. In Germany, temperature fell well below -10 degrees Celsius in the south and east early on Tuesday. Much of the country was covered in snow. In Britain, the Meteorological Office said winter weather hazards could continue throughout the week for most of the country. Temperatures overnight to Tuesday had fallen as low as -12.5 degrees Celsius in Marham, Norfolk in eastern England, marking the coldest night of the winters so far. France's National Weather Service said 38 districts would be placed on orange alert for snow and black ice on Wednesday. Also, hundreds of flights have been cancelled across Europe, with thousands left stranded at airports in Paris and Amsterdam. Disruption is expected to continue into Wednesday. More than 400 flights were cancelled at Amsterdam's Schiphol airport on Wednesday, causing widespread disruption to travel plans. In fact, hundreds of passengers were stranded, with many unable to join connecting flights. Long queues formed at airline counters as people waited for information about when flights would resume. And snow and heavy rain sparked power failures and flooding in parts of the Balkans, with one woman dead in a weather-related incident in Bosnia. Dozens of villages across neighboring Serbia were left without power in the wake of the snowfall, which the state-run RTS broadcaster reporting that the authorities had declared states of emergencies in parts of the west. In the capital Belgrade, heavy snowfall at the weekend brought down trees and branches into perfect cars, and the Serbian Weather Service warned of even more intense precipitation for several regions from Wednesday. And the cold wave has gripped North India in January as temperatures have dipped sharply in several regions, while dense fog reduced visibility in parts of Rajasthan and the plains of Delhi and Uttar Pradesh. The Indian Meteorological Department focuses a gradual fall in minimum temperatures over Punjab, Haryana, Chandigarh and Delhi in the next 2 days, with biting cold ahead. Nationwide, Kashmir is experiencing severe cold, with weather forecast of light rain or snowfall in higher reaches and near zero visibility caused by dense fog over the next few days. In the Kashmir Valley, the 40 days of the harshest winter, known as Chila-e-Kalan, are living up to their change. Meanwhile, southern states such as Tamil Nadu and Kerala may witness spells of rain accompanied by thunderstorms, with isolated heavy rainfall possible in some areas. You're watching DD India News. Time now for some sports news. Two-time Olympic medalist PV Sindhu will return to competitive action for the first time since last September at the Malaysia Open badminton tournament. Sindhu will begin her campaign against Chinese Taipei's Sang Xiao-Yun in Kuala Lumpur on Wednesday. The 30-year-old Indian badminton player has not featured on the BWF World Tour since a quarter-final loss at the China Masters last September. Sindhu subsequently withdrew from the remainder of the 2025 season to recover from a foot injury that hampered her form and led to a series of early exits. She's also expected to lead India's women's team at the Badminton Asia Team Championship 2026 in February. Top-ranked Indian shuttle Lakshya Sen progressed to the second round of the season-opening Malaysia Open in Kuala Lumpur on Tuesday. Lakshya defeated Singapore's Jia Heng Jason Thay in a first-round encounter that lasted 1 hour and 10 minutes. The 24-year-old from Almora, who won the Australian Open and also registered a final finish at Hong Kong last season, defeated world number 21 Thay in 3 sets. A 2021 World Championship bronze medalist, Lakshya, currently ranked world number 13, will next face Hong Kong's Lee on Thursday. Well, that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Nipak Shikrana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.